You probably know the story, right? Jesus, full of righteous anger, flipping tables in the Jerusalem temple. We've always called it the cleansing of the temple. But what if that's not what was happening at all? What if we've been missing the real story? And what if the key to unlocking it is hidden in a really strange, almost petty-seeming event that happened just moments before?
Okay, let's get into it, because this is where the mystery really kicks off. Right before he walks into the temple, Jesus does something that, on the surface, seems, well, just plain weird. He curses a fig tree. And the Bible itself throws in this super confusing detail. It wasn't even the season for figs. So, what on earth is going on here?
I mean, just picture it. Jesus is hungry. He sees this tree that looks promising. It's got all these leaves. He goes over looking for a snack, finds nothing, and just zaps it. It feels a little grumpy, doesn't it? Almost out of character. But this bizarre little moment, it's actually the key that unlocks the entire temple scene.
To solve this puzzle, we've got to look closer at the details, because the biggest clue is hidden in a single phrase that's really easy to just read right past. You see, the writer of the Gospel, Mark, he includes this fascinating little note. He explicitly says, "It was not the season for figs." Now, that's not there to make Jesus look unreasonable. It's Mark basically winking at us, the readers, telling us to pay attention. This isn't an excuse for the tree. It's a huge clue for us.
And here is the crucial piece of information we're all missing. In that part of the world, a fig tree that had leaves in the spring was supposed to also have little edible green buds on it. They weren't the main crop, but they were a sign of a healthy, fruit-producing tree. So the problem wasn't that it was out of season for ripe figs. The problem was that it had all the outward signs of life, the leaves, but it was totally barren inside. It was a fraud.
And this is where the storytelling gets absolutely brilliant. Mark doesn't just put these two stories, the tree and the temple, next to each other by accident. No, he uses this really clever literary technique to weave them together, connecting that phony tree directly to the temple.
He creates what biblical scholars call a Markan sandwich. It's awesome. He starts story A, the fig tree. Then, right in the middle, he interrupts it with story B, the whole temple incident. And only after that does he go back and finish story A. He's intentionally wrapping the temple story inside the fig tree story.
And the point of doing that is crystal clear. The structure itself is the message. Mark is screaming at us, hey, you cannot understand what Jesus did in the temple unless you first understand why he cursed that tree. The two events aren't separate. They're designed to explain each other.
And why is that? Well, because the fig tree wasn't just a random tree. For centuries, it had been an incredibly powerful symbol in Jewish culture.
If you look back at the Old Testament prophets, guys like Jeremiah, a fruitless fig tree was this well-known symbol for the nation of Israel when it was under God's judgment. It was a metaphor for a people who looked alive on the outside but were spiritually dead on the inside. So for Jesus and his followers, seeing a fruitless fig tree would have set off all kinds of alarm bells.
So you can see the direct parallel Jesus is making here. On the outside, the Jerusalem temple was magnificent. I mean, it was the center of everything, bustling with activities, sacrifices, prayers. It had all the leaves of a vibrant religious life. But Jesus shows up and finds it spiritually barren, just like the fig tree. It's all show and no substance.
Okay, so let's take that idea, that the temple is like the fraudulent fig tree, and go back to the main event. This completely reframes what Jesus is doing. This wasn't some kind of spring cleaning. This was a prophetic act of judgment. So on one hand, you have the common view that we all learned. Jesus was just cleansing the temple, trying to reform it and get rid of the corruption. But this new reading, seen through the lens of the fig tree, is way more radical. It suggests Jesus is symbolically shutting the whole operation down. He isn't trying to fix the temple. He's declaring its time is up. He's cursing it. And think about what he actually does. He doesn't just drive out the sellers, he drives out the buyers too. That stops the entire sacrificial system in its tracks. He flips the money changers' tables, which stops the collection of the temple tax. He literally blocks people from carrying things through. This isn't a protest, it's a complete symbolic shutdown. And then he delivers this knockout line, which is actually a mashup of two Old Testament prophecies. The first part, from the book of Isaiah, reminds everyone of the temple's true purpose. But that second part, from Jeremiah, that's the bombshell. See, we hear den of robbers, and we immediately think of a place filled with financial corruption, right? But that's not quite what the original phrase meant. A den isn't where robbers do their robbing. It's where they go to hide out after they've done their dirty work.
So Jesus is saying the temple has become a safe house, a hideout for people whose lives are fundamentally against God's true purpose. It's a judgment on their character, not just their commerce.
Okay, so if Jesus is symbolically declaring an end to the physical temple, the center of Jewish life, what's supposed to replace it? Where do people go now?
Well, the very next morning, we get the end of our Marcan sandwich. The disciples walk by that same fig tree, and it's not just sick, it's withered away to its roots. The curse is complete. And it's this stark visual confirmation of the judgment Jesus just pronounced on the temple system.
You have to put yourself in the disciples' shoes. This would have been a terrifying thought. The temple was everything. It was the one place on earth where God was supposed to dwell. If it's coming to an end, then what? Is that connection to God just over?
But Jesus answers them right away. And he doesn't talk about rebuilding or new buildings. He immediately pivots to teaching them about having mountain-moving faith and how to pray. He's making this profound shift. He's saying the center of true worship is no longer going to be a building made of stone, but a community of people filled with faith.
And just in case anyone in the crowd still missed the point, Jesus tells one final, absolutely devastating story to drive it home.
He tells this parable about some wicked tenants who are clearly meant to be the temple leadership. They manage a vineyard for an owner, but they beat and kill every servant, every prophet the owner sends. So finally, the owner sends his own beloved son, and they kill him too. The conclusion is just chilling. Jesus says the owner will come, destroy those tenants, and give the vineyard to others. It's basically his own commentary on what's happening.
He finishes the whole thing off by quoting the Psalms. The religious leaders, the so-called builders, have rejected him. But he is declaring that he, the stone they threw away, is about to become the most important piece of the new building, the cornerstone of a new kind of temple, a new way to connect with God.
And that's what this whole episode leaves us with. When we see the temple incident not as a simple cleansing, but as a prophetic cursing, it changes everything. It's not just a story about correcting some bad behavior. It's about the dramatic end of one era of worship and the beginning of a brand new one, forcing us to ask, if the old temple's role was over, what new house of prayer was being built in its place?